Look, YouTube, and welcome back to a new video with me, Rams fan YT. It is a lovely sunny day today, where I am in Newcastle. I've just been come back from the coast, lovely Tyne and Wear, and we're here for my weekly predictions. We've got some Champions League second legs, round of 16 ties. Got the EFL Cup Final, got Tyne and Wear derby. We've got so much more high stakes games as well to go through. So let's dive straight in at the Emirates as Arsenal are hosting Bundesliga outfit Bayer Leverkusen. The first leg of these two teams ended up in a draw, and I suspect Arsenal get the job done at home here. I've gone 4-1 to the Gunners. I just suspect that they can't possibly fall out of the Champions League against Bayer Leverkusen. Surely not. Chelsea versus Paris Saint-Germain. PSG absolutely demolished Chelsea in their home leg. And I just don't see Chelsea having any way of coming back from this. I therefore think, even though it is at Stamford Bridge, Paris Saint-Germain will win this one by 2-1. Manchester City versus Real Madrid. I think there is a realm of possibility that Man City maybe get back into this tie. You know, they've 3-0 down, and I think they'll give a right good go at it. I think they score a couple, but I then think Real Madrid will kick into action and win 3-2 to Real Madrid. Crisis averted for the Spaniards. Watford versus Wrexham in the only championship game on tonight. And from a biased Derby County fan perspective, I'd rather this game not actually be playing right now. Although I suppose they will inevitably have to play each other. I would rather Watford win because we are 5 points clear of Watford at the moment and we're only 3 points off the playoffs. But I suspect it won't end up that way. Actually, it's a victory. I'm going to go, because I want this to happen, a 1-0 win for Watford. It doesn't improve their goal difference massively. It'll give them 3 points, which means that Wrexham lose. I think the whole championship is vying for Wrexham to bottle the playoffs. Don't really care who it is. I think we might even get a bit of pity support on the neutrals to make that 6th playoff spot, because I don't think many people would want Wrexham or Southampton in that position. AFC Wimbledon versus Leyton Orient. Wimbledon, as much as a mid-table as you can come, really. 13th place. I mean, they're still going to probably float around that mid-table position coming into the season. Leyton Orient, 4 points above a relegation zone. Back-to-back wins for the O's, but I think AFC Wimbledon in this London derby will win 2-0 at Plough Lane. Blackpool versus Port Vale. Some decent results of late to Port Vale, and Blackpool haven't won in the last 5 games, which it's getting tight down there. 3 points off safety now. Blackpool will probably be viewing this as a must-win game at all costs. But a Port Vale side which is actually relatively confident at the moment, I think might manage to scum themselves a 1-0 win here. Bolton Wanderers versus Doncaster Rovers. Doncaster Rovers, I would argue, may be safe. My biggest concern is their goal difference. So they need to keep their form up, which is relatively decent of late. 3 wins in the last 6. It's a difficult game, though, against Bolton, who are unbeaten in 6. Very strong-looking outfit. A fair few draws in them, it must be said. They have got the highest amount of draws in the division at 14 draws. So they've dropped too many points from winning positions, but I do suspect that they win this one fairly comfortably. 3-0 to Wanderers at home. Bradford City versus Mansfield Town. Bradford, you can never quite tell which team is going to turn up. They've managed to get enough wins to be in the playoffs, 19 wins at that. But 11 losses says that they're just not consistent at all. And I think Mansfield, unbeaten in 4 now, might be able to get a fairly hefty win here. I've actually gone with a 5-1 win to Nigel Clough's men. I just suspect that Bradford City just don't quite know who's going to turn up. Burton Albion versus Reading. Reading are 1 point off the playoffs and will probably be viewing this as a very, very strong chance to get a win here. But you're looking at Burton, and Burton are the sort of side, aren't they, that you can't quite place your finger on. They're the sort of side that get wins up against the bigger teams, the ones which you expect them to beat, but lose against the ones they're not expected to beat. Well, they're at home against the side that are suspected not to beat, and I think they might win as a result. 3-2, if you try and get what I'm saying out of that. Cardiff City versus Wycombe Wanderers. Cardiff have become very inconsistent of late, not inconsistent enough for them to not get promoted, but they're 4 points off top of league Lincoln City now. But I suspect they win this one. Wycombe Wanderers now have got a couple of defeats in a row there, and I think Cardiff maybe add a third. 2-1 to the Bluebirds at the Cardiff City Stadium. Huddersfield Town versus Lincoln City. Huddersfield are sort of sharpshooters when it comes to getting rid of managers this season. It must be said. They're currently 6th, which seems a bit odd. And yes, Liam Manning is still in the managerial hot seat, but a lot of fans are not happy with him at the moment. And you could say that he is probably needs to watch out on his steps. But so far, they're still just about holding on into the playoffs. And I think they could maybe force a draw against a impeccable Lincoln side who have won 6 in a row. I've gone a 2-2 draw in this one. Maybe they can get a point where Cardiff City could not. Luton Town versus Exeter City. Luton are a wildly unpredictable side and a bit of a disappointing season for the Hatters, it must be said. But you know what, Exeter, they haven't won in a very long time. They're a very poor team at the moment. And at Kenilworth Road, maybe Luton will win this one. I've gone with 4-0 to Luton Town. I just don't see Exeter getting a win in this. Peterborough United versus Rotherham United. Peterborough United haven't won in the last 5 games, but Rotherham, well, they're in the relegation zone. They've been looking poor all season. They've sort of been exposed that Paul Warren carried that side a lot further than maybe was anticipated. I've gone with a real enthralling 3-3 draw in this one, but it's just as likely that it's going to be a 0-0 draw. Plymouth Argyle versus Stevenage. Plymouth in 10th, 1 defeat in the last 6 games. Very good run of form. 3 points for playoffs. You can't quite wipe Plymouth out of the picture just yet. Stevenage are in 5th, though. It's going to be a difficult opposition for them to face. But seeing at home park, and they normally make that quite a fortress, I have gone 2-1 to Argyle. Stockport County versus Northampton Town. Stockport, with their 3 defeats in a row, have now dropped out of the playoffs on goal difference, which does make things an awful difficulty because now it places expectations for they have to beat Northampton, which looks easier said than done. They've not won a game in a long time, have Northampton, who have recently parted companies with Kevin Nolan, their former manager. Colin Calderwood is the interim. But I suspect that Northampton, they're not quite dead yet, and I think they might get a scrappy 1-1 draw. There's a reason that Stockport have dropped out of the playoffs. Barnsley versus Wigan Athletic. Barnsley in 12th. They're sort of all right. 1 defeat in the last 5 games. They're just sort of coasting through this season a bit. I think that's a fair way to say that. Wigan have announced that they are going to be looking for new owners this week, interestingly enough. They are 3 points from the relegation zone. They'll probably just be hoping for safety and hoping that new owners come in before the summer transfer window then. It's all very congested down there. They're 4 points off 15th place Mansfield Town. So it really is anyone's game at the moment. And I suspect maybe a 1-0 win for Wigan. I think a bit of optimism is afoot. They've had a few decent wins of late and they're really in that scrap. So every point is vital. Newport County versus Bromley. I think a little while ago, people would have probably said, Bromley destined to win this. But they've had a fair few draws, 4 draws in the last 6 games now, dropping a few points. And Newport County seem to have picked up a bit of form. They're now in 21st, outside of relegation zone. Decent job from the Exiles of late. And I think they force a point in this one. I've gone with a 1-1 draw in this particular game, which would be very useful for them. It must be said, because they are still not out of the woods yet. Accrington Stanley versus Notts County. Accrington Stanley haven't won in the last 5 games. Notts County, well, they lost their rivalry up against Chesterfield. Get in, what a result. But I suspect they right the wrongs of the previous result and do win this one. They will obviously be missing, who was it? It was, I can't remember, Ollie Burney or something. I can't remember. Someone who was got sent off for throwing a shoe off an opponent's shoe off the pitch, which I've never seen before in that local rivalry on the weekend. So we're going to be without him. But yeah, I think they run out in this one 3-0 winners, back to winning ways. But thankfully, there is a 4-point cushion between Cambridge and Notts County. That game between Chesterfield and Notts County may well happen, may still occur. Bristol Rovers versus Shrewsbury Town, 19th versus 18th, 4 points gap difference, relatively similar form. Really hard, therefore, to pick a winner in this one. I've gone home advantage and I've gone 1-0 Bristol Rovers, but it could quite easily go the other way. Cheltenham Town versus Crewe Alexandra. Cheltenham on a really good run of form, actually, of late. They've hardly lost a game since pretty much the last month or so, maybe a couple of months now. Therefore, I think Crewe might want to watch out in this one, who are very hit and miss side at the moment, Crewe. And they're out of the playoffs by 3 points. There's still definitely a possibility for them to do it. But I think Cheltenham run out 2-1 winners here. Chesterfield versus Oldham Athletic. Oldham are in impeccable form themselves at the moment. They've got a couple of games in hand on Chesterfield, who are the 7th place team at the moment. Get a couple of wins in there, that then puts them up onto 58 points, 1 point off the playoffs. It's not quite over for Oldham at the moment, actually. You can't quite write them off, and they're on a really good run of form. They've got the win behind them. They could be one of them sides that actually make a very late run and end up in the playoffs and maybe get promoted as a result of it because they're an informed team. We've seen it happen before. I think Chesterfield might be able to hold them to a draw, though. I've gone with a 1-1 draw in this game. Crawley Town versus Barnet. Crawley are, a bit of trouble. Just the relegation zone at the moment, without a win in quite a while, it must be said. 1 point the relegation zone, Barrow. And they're going to be hoping that Barnet aren't on form at the moment. And to be fair, only 2 wins in the last 6 for Barnet. It's a very mid-table season, which I think Barnet fans will probably take. It's their first season back in League 2 in quite a while. I think maybe Crawley do one-out winners here. I've gone 2-0 to Crawley, which maybe isn't the greatest. So just to go to comments, Abraham, come on, Arsenal. Fair enough. If you want Gunners to win, I think it wouldn't be too bad. Keep it up, mate. Are you going to talk about the Premier League? We'll talk about the Premier League when we get to it on the weekend. So keep on tuned in because there are some Premier League games this weekend. Gillingham versus Swindon Town, though, back to League 2 for now. It heads like tier 1 to 6 predictions. We cover the whole of that pyramid. And Gillingham 16th, Swindon are in 6th. Bit of a disparity between the two, but at the moment, neither side is particularly picking up a proliferation of points at the moment. So maybe a 1-1 draw at Priestfield might be the result in this one. Grimsby Town versus Fleetwood Town, 2 not great sort of places, are they? They're both knackered coastal towns. I do apologise if you're from here, either of them towns, but I think you can agree with me on that. Fleetwood, decent run of form of late, actually. Not lost in quite a while. Grimsby, 3 points off the playoffs. Could well get there. I've gone 2-1 to Grimsby Town just because they've got that added advantage at the moment, which could just see them emerge as playoff contenders come the end of the season. Salford City versus Barrow. 3 wins in a row for Salford and up against the Barrow side who have slipped into relegation zone, haven't won in a very long time. Looking tough for the Cumbrians at the moment. It's going to be an easy 3-0 win for Salford City, in my opinion. Tranmere Rovers versus Harrogate Town. Well, you see, Tranmere, they lost 5 in a row, got a point in their last one. They're actually sleepwalking into a relegation fight. I think I said that in the last video, and I do genuinely mean it. I think they will be very lucky. Pete Wild has been appointed as interim manager, who I think is the old Oldham manager, Barrow and Fleetwood manager. He was old Oldham as well. He was at Oldham in 2019. Thought there was the time he was at Oldham. But yeah, he's been around all the Northwest clubs, hasn't he? I think maybe they do get a win here. Harrogate Town haven't impressed me much this season. Bottom of the league. Real difficulties, I would suggest. 2-1 to Tranmere Rovers. Walsall versus Cambridge United. Walsall are so hit and miss every single week at the moment. Well, Cambridge, they're different gravy, and they're looking to cement themselves in the top 3 and an instant return to League One. Therefore, 2-0 to Cambridge United is what I suspect in this one. Down to the National League, we've got Brackley Town versus Solihull Moors. And yeah, I mean, Brackley just can't buy a win for love nor money at the moment. They've lost, 6 or 7 in a row. Solihull Moors, well, they're also not in a hot form of in the moment as well. They've neither won in their last 6. So just purely by the basis for Solihull Moors are slightly higher up the league table. I've gone with a 1-0 win to Solihull Moors, but someone's run, unless they get a draw, of course, will have to come to an end here. Gateshead versus Wealdstone. Gateshead beginning to pick up points. 4 games unbeaten, which has not happened in a while for the South Tyneside-based side. And 2 points off safety now. Is the impossible possible? Will the miraculous survival happen for the Heed? May well do. They're up against Wealdstone, who are 3 wins in a row. Very decent form at the moment from the side in London. But I suspect Gateshead, maybe in a win midweek, could win this one. Scrape a 1-0 win. There's still life in the old Heed left. Southend United versus Rochdale. Well, Southend managed to pick up a point up against, or was it? I think it was a point against Carlisle the other week. And they've been actually doing fairly well at the moment. 4 games unbeaten, 1 point outside of playoffs, 3 games in hand over 7th place Halifax. I suspect Southend do manage to get into the playoffs. But it's a difficult challenge. Rochdale, don't get me wrong, they are impeccable, top of the league. I think York City will be hoping for Rochdale to drop points in this one, and I think they might do. I've gone with a 1-1 draw. Truro City versus Scunthorpe United. Scunthorpe in 5th. They are unlikely, I would suggest, heavily unlikely to be able to surmount the amount of points to get into that top 3 and have the seeded home advantage for the semi-finals. But I also suspect it's equally unlikely that they drop out of the playoffs. So they're going to be probably in the playoffs coming into the season. Up against bottom of the league, Truro City. It's going to be a fairly obvious 4-0 win for Scunthorpe United, I'm afraid. Woking versus Yeovil Town. Woking are 4 games unbeaten, decent enough. Yeovil just about doing enough to keep their head above the water. 7 points of a relegation zone now. I doubt Yeovil will get relegated at this rate, and I actually think they might run out 2-0 winners here. International League North got ASC Telford United versus Macclesfield. And 2 sides heavily putting themselves forward to being involved in the playoff pictures. 5th place, Macclesfield. At the moment, they are doing well and will probably get to playoffs at the end of the season. I suspect the same will probably be said for Telford, who are 8th place, 2 points off the playoffs, but game in hand over Scarborough and a vastly superior goal difference. Like, we're talking insurmountable levels. So it may even come down to goal difference. I think also this personal game will be an end-to-end game with Macclesfield edging out 3-2 winners. Chorley versus Kidderminster Harriers. I know Chorley have been immense of late, and they really have. Maybe they're aiming for that top 3 because they're on the same amount of points as Merthyr Town with 3 games in hand over the Welsh outfit. But you can never quite discredit Chorley. Chorley's an odd team. They're a team that you can never quite predict. And maybe at home they can get a 2-1 win. Would be an upset, but that is why we live a bit of non-league football. Darlington versus Radcliffe. Darlington in 6th. Radcliffe in 10th. 5 games without a win, though, for Radcliffe does not bode well for this game. They will need to hope that they can get back to winning ways in this one. I suspect not. I think Darlington win 2-1 at home. Hereford versus Fylde. Hereford are an odd team. They're now 5 games unbeaten, 1 point off safety, with 4 games in hand. 6 games in hand over Oxford City above them. They're definitely going to get safety. The question is, for me, even though they're in relegation at the moment, is how high can they climb and end the season strongly? They've been a bit of an unknown quantity for a while. I have been mentioning that regularly throughout the season. And maybe they surprise Fylde here and force a 2-2 draw. To the delight of the South Shields fans, I'm sure. But we're going to crush them down because they're up against King's Lynn Town, who are also desperately need in points at this stage in the season to make sure that they don't get relegated. They're only 4 points for the relegation zone themselves. I think in this one, King's Lynn may be winning 3-1. I'm sure South Shields fans won't be hoping for that, but they did lose their last game. Leamington versus Buxton. Buxton are an odd team, aren't they? The Bucks, I hoped against hope, will manage to mount a run to get into playoffs, but it seems pretty insurmountable nowadays with them in 11th. 8 points off the playoffs. I think it's fairly unlikely, I would suggest, for them to be able to get enough points for them to get into the playoffs. So maybe Leamington, who are also unlikely to get survival, they're bottom of the league. I think maybe a 1-1 draw. It's just a bit of pride for Leamington at this point. Peterborough Sports versus Marine. Peterborough Sports managed to put an end to their really bad run and win up against Alfreton Town, which is not great for the Derbyshire-based side. Marine, very hit and miss. 3 losses in the last 4 games with 1 win as the other result in that spell. 2-0, I'm going to go with Peterborough Sports. Maybe they start picking up a bit of form themselves at this moment in time. Maybe have left it a bit too late, though. We'll see. Southport versus Alfreton Town. 4 wins now without a win for Alfreton. Has that brief flicker of hope snuffed out for the Reds. Remains to be seen. At Southport, they're 3 wins in the last 4 games. Decent little spell for the Merseysiders, and I think they get back to winning ways. They did lose the last one, but I think they win this one 3-1 do they still play at Hague Avenue? I can't quite remember, but they're at home. Spennymoor Town versus Curzon Ashton, 13th versus 15th. 4 points for difference between these 2 teams. Not a lot in the league table either. Maybe a 0-0 draw will be the fair result in this game. Chesham United versus AFC Towton. Towton in 14th, very mid-table. Chesham, well, they're dropped down to 11th. They've not done great. They had a really great run of form, which pushed them up 6 points off the playoffs. And they still got 2 games in hand over Ebbsfleet United, so could secure themselves back into the contention, of course. But yes, it all starts here with a desperately needed result against Towton, which I think they do get, actually. I've gone with a 2-0 win for Chesham United in this one. Enfield Town versus Dorking Wanderers. Dorking, top of the league at the moment. Decent season. I mean, they were always suspected to make an immediate return to the National League, weren't they? And I think it's going to be a fairly obvious win for them here. Enfield haven't won in the last 5. 2-0 to Dorking Wanderers. Farnborough versus Dagenham and Redbridge. Dagenham and Redbridge with KSI now owning a stake in the side. Not quite sure which side of Dagenham and Redbridge turns up week for week. It's very mid-table so far. Farnborough 2 points for relegation, although they have got 2 games in hand against most of the teams in and around them, other than Bath City, who I think they do need to watch out for, who've got 2 games in hand over them. Very mismatched at the moment, as you can tell. Farnborough at home, I think, win this game at 2-1. Maybe a last-minute win or something. Horsham versus Bath City. Horsham haven't won a game in the last 4, lost 3 in a row. Very mid-table. You could hold your head high up, I think, Horsham, but they managed to be competitive in the National League South. But Bath City desperately need the points a bit more, and I think they get back to winning ways, which they've not had in a while here. 2-1. Maidenhead United versus Ebbsfleet United. Maidenhead in the playoffs in 6th, 4 games unbeaten. Decent enough, they've managed to secure themselves in the playoffs only by a point, admittedly, still at the moment. But maybe Alan Devonshire's men can make an immediate return to the National League. They're up against Ebbsfleet, though, in 7th. They're on the same points, actually. Could be a very close and entertaining game. If I was a neutral, I would potentially go and watch this one. Maidenhead, I think, at York Road to edge out 2-1 here. Weston-super-Mare versus Tunbridge Angels. Weston-super-Mare, although they have had back-to-back wins, have still managed to drop out of the playoffs in 9th, 2 points off getting over that dotted line. It was mad to think that at one point they looked like they could seal the title, and they've had a very bad winter period, but maybe are emerging from their hibernation and will absolutely batter Tunbridge Angels, who've got nought to play for in 16th. I've gone 3-0 to Tunbridge Angels. And that concludes tonight's games. We've got Champions League up next. And we're talking about Barcelona versus Newcastle United. The home for this game will be Spotify Camp Nou, or as we all like to call it, just for Camp Nou. Huge week for the Newcastle fan base, isn't it? They've got a away day to Barcelona, and then they've got a match up against Sunderland in the Tyne and Wear derby on Sunday. Huge amount of pressure surely being placed upon the players in this one. This is probably the biggest week of football they'll ever play in black and white. Unfortunately for the Geordies, I do think Barcelona will win this one 3-1. I just can't see Newcastle getting through this one. Liverpool versus Galatasaray. The game's out at Anfield with the Turkish outfit having that slender 1-goal advantage going into it. It's going to be a difficult game for the Turkish side because I'm imagining Arne Slot will be full power. But I've gone 3-2 in this game, and because they've got rid of away goals, that means it will go to extra time and potentially on penalties, of which I think Galatasaray will win in that period. And the shock potentially of this round will be that Galatasaray knock out Liverpool. Tottenham Hotspur versus Atletico Madrid. Well, considering how bad Spurs were turning up in that one, I doubt they're going to turn up for this one. And I think Madrid may even play their reserves and still manage to win at 1-0. Spurs are a right mess at the moment. Southampton versus Norwich City. 2 of the most incredible teams in the Championship at the moment. What a turnaround of their season they have had. 4 wins in a row for Norwich City. 1 defeat in 6. Southampton also haven't lost in the last 6 games. And they've had 4 wins in the last 6. So it's going to be a very even game, and I think it's going to be a very entertaining 4-4 draw at St Mary's. Could be a fascinating one. MK Dons versus Colchester United. Well, I mean, MK Dons will probably get promoted now. Could even win the league, actually, still. But I think there's a little bit of everybody who would rather MK Dons did not. And I think Colchester United, therefore, will win this one by 1-0. No rationale for it, but they're 6 points off the playoffs with a game in hand over Chesterfield. Maybe, just maybe, Colchester could provide a late run for it. But I keep on flip-flopping on that video by video. Midtjylland versus Nottingham Forest. As a Derby fan, as you can tell, based on this sort of running kit sort of thing, I would be massively hoping for Midtjylland rather to end up securing the win. They won their last one, and they're now at home, and I think they do win this one as well. 1-0, dumping Nottingham Forest out of Europa League. Will be even greater if Spurs wins on the weekend. West Ham managed to get a draw. Hey presto, fights from relegation zone and dumped out of the Europa League. Win-win situation. Aston Villa versus Lille. I think Aston Villa press home their advantage and win at Villa Park 2-1. So at least there'll be one team still from England still kicking around in the Europa League. AEK Larnaca, or Larnaca, I don't know how you pronounce that. The Greek side versus Crystal Palace. I imagine the Greek side, maybe at home, will win this one 1-0. Crystal Palace seem to be running a bit out of energy and steam with the amount of games that they've had to play in this competition. They'd certainly be expected to win, though. Alfreton Town versus Hereford. Interesting one in itself. Real relegation 6-pointer, I would suggest. And Hereford, well, they're 1 point off safety. I talked about them a bit earlier. Alfreton, well, they're 6 points off safety. Important game for Alfreton, and I think they're going to draw it 0-0. On to the Premier League ones, the hotly requested by Stern Fußball. That may have been a horrendous German pronunciation. AFC Bournemouth versus Manchester United is our game, which is kicking us off on the Saturday. And it's a decent enough display at the moment by Bournemouth. A lot of draws in the club. 14 draws is by far the most in the Premier League. 4 of those draws have been in a row in the last couple of weeks or so. And I think they get another one here, to be honest. I see this one ending a draw, a 1-1 draw at the Vitality Stadium. Sorry, this was on Friday night, isn't it? And Preston North End versus Stoke City is also on the Friday night. Both of these two teams have fallen off massively this season. Compare the start of the season to the second. They're like the invertedness of Southampton and Norwich. Stoke have dropped down to 13th. Preston have dropped down to 17th. In fact, I would suggest that Preston North End, if they lose this game against Stoke, might contemplate changing their manager. Paul Heckingbottom has managed to absolutely vault his team from what looked like a great position to be in to being in danger of in the relegation zone. Anyway, I suspect this one will be a 1-1 draw, which doesn't really suit either party at the moment. Brighton and Hove Albion versus Liverpool. Liverpool, for me, they've been dropping far, far too many points this season. Arne Slot, I would suggest, is very lucky to still be in a job. With Liverpool in 5th place, having won the league last season, I think he might be exposed to a bit of fraudulentness. I think they got a draw against Spurs in the last game. Like, how do you even do that when Spurs were in such a mess? They are up against Brighton, who have had 3 wins in the last 4 games. I think Brighton can pile the misery for Liverpool and win 3-2 at the Amex. Fulham versus Burnley, 11th place Fulham. There's not much for Fulham to play for, though, if we're going to be brutally honest. And I think Burnley, could we see they're approaching the final 12 games now. Still possible, Burnley, but they'll need to go on a mental run, and maybe it starts now. I'm going to go 2-0. for Burnley. Is Scott Parker still a manager at Burnley? I believe he is. If so, he's up against his former club. He is. He formerly managed Fulham, of course. Everton versus Chelsea. Everton in 8th, Chelsea in 6th. 5 points is the gap between these two teams. Chelsea are also dropping too many points at the moment, and I think they drop further here. 0-0 draw at Everton's new ground. Leeds United versus Brentford. Brentford in 7th place. They're doing very well, actually, the Bees at the moment, I must say. Leeds, well, they're down in 15th. There's still a chance of them getting relegated, but I suspect it will probably be one of Tottenham, Forest, or West Ham at the moment. I think they get a 0-0 draw in this one. Blackburn Rovers versus Middlesbrough. Blackburn in 19th. Borough are in 2nd. Very decent displays so far this season for Middlesbrough, it must be said. But you know what? They've had a couple of faulty displays of late, but back to winning ways is what I would suggest in this one. 2-0 to Middlesbrough. Derby County versus Birmingham City. 8th versus 9th. 4 points for Derby to get into the playoffs, and I would love winning against Birmingham City. It's going to be difficult, though. It really is. We got a good win against Portsmouth. It wasn't the most pretty way of doing things, but we got the job done. I think maybe at home we get a 2-2 draw. We always seem to get a draw against Birmingham. It just seems to be the law at the moment in time. Yes, that is a Spennymoor pint glass, by the way. Ipswich Town versus Millwall. 3rd versus 4th, joint on points. Ipswich with a game in hand, though, which if they do win that one, they could leapfrog Middlesbrough and end up in the top 2, which I suspect will happen. I think Ipswich on a good run of form. Middlesbrough might have to settle for the playoffs, as I think Ipswich beat Millwall 3-1. Essentially, this is a win-lose situation for Middlesbrough fans, because if one of the two teams wins this, and you don't win your game, then they could danger in leapfrogging you. If they draw it, though, you gain that advantage of them dropping points when you could win it. So it's all about, if Middlesbrough manage to win against Blackburn, then surely it's only an advantage for the Middlesbrough fans. Bristol City versus West Bromwich Albion. Bristol City in 14th. West Brom in 21st. Just above the relegation zone, West Brom by a singular point. Will they stay up this season? I'm not so sure, you know. I think they might be in danger of slipping through the cracks and ending up getting relegated. I'm therefore gone with Bristol City to win this one, even though they've not won in the last 4. 2-1 for the Robins. Charlton Athletic versus Norwich City. Charlton are an odd team, aren't they? They're in 18th, and you just sort of think, well, they've got to that 48-point mark, which is standard wisdom to say that you'll probably be able to stay up in a season. They're, 9 points from the relegation zone with 8 games left to go. So it's not impossible, but it's unlikely for Charlton to get relegated. And I think Norwich, considering their good form at the moment, might win this one 1-0. Hull City versus Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday will probably think there's no way of them ever being able to beat their local rivals, Hull City, in this. But you never know. They've only had 1 win in 4 now, Hull, and Sheffield Wednesday may surprise everyone. And therefore, I've gone with a 2-0 win for Sheffield Wednesday against local rivals Hull. Queen's Park Rangers versus Portsmouth. QPR have not been great this season. We must be honest. Neither Portsmouth been great in front of goals so far this season. Only 36 goals scored, which is about the same as everyone else around them, let's be honest, but still probably a contributing factor for why they are in the position they are in, just above a relegation zone. But maybe they start scoring here up against a QPR with a very bad defence. 60 goals conceded is joint worse with Leicester City. I've gone with a 2-1 win for Portsmouth. Sheffield United versus Wrexham is the next one to go over. Sheffield United, disappointing and underwhelming season for the Blades. Wrexham, well, they're in the playoffs. But I kind of just want the Blades at Bramall Lane to absolutely demolish Sheffield United. And sorry, not to demolish Wrexham in this one. That's a slip of a tongue, isn't it? I think Sheffield United win this one 4-2. Southampton versus Oxford United. I know Oxford rather have been great at the moment, and so Southampton. Oxford have been unbeaten in the last 3 wins in that spell. 1 point off safety. They could actually really turn this around. I think this is going to be an absolutely exciting game to watch, but a 3-2 win for Southampton. But I would love Oxford to win this one. Not only would it seem to compile Sheffield Wednesday's misery, not Sheffield Wednesday's misery, well, it might do, but they're already relegated. It compile Leicester's misery as well. But it gives Derby a bit of a better chance of getting the playoffs as well, because Southampton, you've had your good form, you can quieten down a bit now, you know. Watford versus Leicester City. I think Leicester do win this one. Every point now is becoming vital for the Foxes, and I suspect they do beat Watford in this one 2-1. Will it be enough to see them emerge out of a relegation zone come the end of the weekend remains to be seen. But yes, Swansea City versus Coventry City. Swansea banging mid-table in 11th. Not much to say about the Swans, really. Coventry, they did have a loss in their last game against Southampton. But they are so far ahead, 7 points clear of Middlesbrough. It's not going to really make much of a difference. They're going to win the league. They're going to win this game. 2-0 Coventry City, easy. Cardiff City versus Blackpool. Yes, I think Cardiff might drop further points here. I think Blackpool could maybe force a draw. I just got a slight hunch that Blackpool are going to draw this one 1-1. Has no rationale at all. Blackpool, by no rights, would be even getting anything from this game, with Cardiff in the top 2 and them in the relegation zone. But I just think they could potentially get something. Luton Town versus Stockport County. Well, with Stockport losing a few, and I think maybe if Stockport lose both their games this week, right, and that will probably mean that they maybe even drop down to 11th. Do you question how far Dave Challoner could actually take the Stockport County team? Because I would actually suggest, that they're doing a decent enough job at the moment of being competitive. But is there a ceiling for them? I don't know. But I think Luton Town do win this one 1-0, which does put a little bit of pressure on Dave Challoner. And maybe I'm just the one who's the only person who's suggesting that, and you can all tell me to shut up. But I would say that maybe Stockport County have a higher potential than Challoner can take them at the moment. AFC Wimbledon versus Peterborough United, 13th versus 14th. They're next to each other on the table. There's not going to be a lot of deal in this. Maybe home advantage, 2-1 Wimbledon. Barnsley versus Doncaster Rovers, a South Yorkshire derby. 17th place Doncaster Rovers will be travelling to the Oakwell in 12th. And I think Doncaster, they up their game for their local rivals much more than they do for the rest of the games this season. So yeah, 3-1 to Doncaster Rovers is what I've gone with in this one. Disappointing result. I think Conor Hourihane is still the manager of Barnsley. He was last time I checked, and I've not heard he's been sacked. Yep, he's still there, even though it has been an underwhelming season for the Tykes. Burton Albion versus Bradford City. Another team that Burton will probably not be expecting to beat, and another team that I think, another result I think Bradford will lose maybe a bit heavily, as I think Burton went out as upsetters again and win 4-0. It just seems to be the Brewers' way at the moment. Leyton Orient versus Wycombe Wanderers. An interesting game for Wycombe to maybe get ahead in this one. 3 points off the playoffs. Leyton Orient, well, they're down in 19th. They'll just be hoping to get at least a few points to bolster their safety campaign. But yeah, let's face it, Wycombe will win this one 1-0 to the chair, boys. Lincoln City versus Rotherham United. I think a lot of people will probably say, yeah, look, Lincoln, they're going to win this one. They're impeccably great at the moment. They're just winning games after games after games. There'll be nothing to stop them demolishing Rotherham. Except this is football, and this is one of the reasons we love it. And I think actually Rotherham can maybe pull up an upset and like win 1-0. To be honest, it could just be one of them crazy days of football. Mansfield Town versus Northampton Town. With Mansfield having that high from that 5-1, because that's definitely going to happen, they'll be coming to Northampton and thinking, you know what, we're going to demolish the Cobblers. We're going to cobble them to death. But I think Northampton Town will prevail in this one and also shit out a 1-0 in this game over Mansfield Town. Hence the vast unpredictability nature of Mansfield this season. Plymouth Argyle versus Huddersfield Town. I would say this is a 6-pointer, actually. 3 points is what separates them. And I think with a decent amount of sway of goals, if Plymouth, absolutely run out and demolish Huddersfield, then they could overtake them. It's unlikely to happen, but I think this is an important game nevertheless. It's at Home Park, and as I was saying, Plymouth are good at Home Park. 3-1 to the Pilgrims is what I've gone with in this one. Great work from Argyle at the moment, it must be said. Port Vale versus Bolton Wanderers. I'm sorry, Port Vale fans, but I do think this is going to be a Bolton win. It's got it written all over it. I think maybe they reduce the deficit, and I think it'll only be a 1-0 to Bolton, but it is going to be what it is. Stevenage versus Reading. A bit of a local rivalry of sorts. I don't know, maybe, but it's also an important game. 2 points separating these two teams, both within the home county sort of region of the UK. Yeah, I mean, Stevenage do have a game hand over Reading, which probably will help, but I'm not going to be drawn on who to win this one because I think it will be a 1-1 draw at the Lamex. Wigan Athletic versus Exeter City. With Exeter being on their abysmal run of form, maybe Wigan can get something from this game. I think it's going to be a 0-0 draw, a very low-scoring game. I can't see either side hitting the barn door at this point. Cambridge United versus Salford City. I think if Cambridge win this, we can pretty much confirm they're going to be in the top 3, I would suggest. Salford, though, are 4 points behind them and are no mean feat at the moment. They are winning a fair few games. They're doing all right, the Ammies, aren't they? The Class of 92s club. But maybe at Abbey Stadium for Cambridge, I think they win this one 2-1. But I could quite easily see that going the other way, to be honest. MK Dons versus Barnet. Barnet are likely to win this, but maybe they could get a draw in it. 11 draws for MK Dons. There's a fair few draws at the moment, actually. Both have 11 draws, and I'm going to go with another one. 2-2 draw in this one. A lot of draws around it in League 2 this season. Accrington Stanley versus Chesterfield. I will say now for the Spyrites, this is a must-win game. If you wanted to get into playoffs, you need to be beating teams like Accrington Stanley, who are without a win in the last 5. I think Chesterfield have got to win this one for me. 1-0 to the Spyrites. Bromley versus Colchester United. Right, I'm in one of my moods of willing Colchester to manage to somehow upset everyone and get into the playoffs. Go on, and we'll get them to beat Bromley 1-0. We'll do that. I'm just in one of their moods. And I flip-flop about it every single season, it feels like, and normally end up looking like a right mug. Fleetwood Town versus Crawley Town. It's going to be a Fleetwood win, isn't it? It's got to be. It's not a pretty place to go at the best of times. It's a very rough stadium, difficult place. And yeah, I think Fleetwood win 1-0. Secure that 3 points. It's probably all too little too late for the COD Army, but you never know. They could well be late insurgencies into the playoffs. Gillingham versus Bristol Rovers. A win for Gillingham here, I feel. I just think Bristol Rovers, although they're a decent run of form, as I have alluded to earlier in the video, they're still below Gillingham for a reason. And I think Gillingham, they're just sort of there. They're just 16th. You never quite know which Gillingham team's going to turn up. So yeah, 2-0 to Gillingham at Priestfield. A couple of wins for them. A piece for Kent's side. Grimsby Town versus Barrow. Two awful towns. I mentioned this about Grimsby earlier, but Barrow is another one of them ones. There's a few of them kicking around in League Two, it must be said. Not great places. But I think maybe an upset for many. I've gone with a Barrow win up against Grimsby here. I've gone with a 2-1 win for Barrow. I'm not always going to back the favourites, and here I am not doing so. Therefore, if they do this, then that it provides that confidence, that lift, that maybe, just maybe, they could stay up. Notts County versus Cheltenham Town. Cheltenham, talking about teams full of confidence, Cheltenham are one of them at the moment, and I think maybe that confidence can be taken in up against Notts County, and they're not going to fear anyone and win at Meadow Lane 2-1 to Cheltenham Town. Come on, you Robins, you know. Oldham Athletic versus Harrogate Town. See, this would be like where Oldham's unbeaten run comes to an end, because it'd be like the most footballing thing ever, wouldn't it? Harrogate, they're not great at the moment. They're in relegation zone, 3 points off safety, and then they just pop up and win 2-1 up against Oldham Athletic, you know, and that is what I predicted, because it's going to happen. Shrewsbury Town versus Crewe Alexandra. With 4 wins in the last 6, Shrewsbury have picked up a remarkable amount of results for a team which looked like they were in danger of being relegated at one point this season. I even said so at the beginning of the season that I thought they were going to. Whereas Crewe, they're 3 points off the playoffs. A little bit of a local rivalry in this one, actually, just a tad. And I think maybe a 1-1 draw at Gay Meadows at this one. Tranmere Rovers versus Swindon Town. With Swindon not impressing me a lot at this moment in time, I think Tranmere might be able to get a point. Just about rescue one. I've gone with a 1-1 draw. On to Walsall versus Newport County. Matt Sadler is no longer in the saddle at Walsall Football Club. He is no longer in charge of the Saddlers. Which is a shame, because that will be the last time I'll be able to use that pun. Darren Byfield is currently the interim manager. It'll be interesting to see who they do select as the successor. But maybe that does mean that they will pick up a bit of form. And you know what? Up against Newport County, who are in danger of being relegated, surely these Saddlers win this one. Surely. I've gone 2-0 at Bescott Stadium to Walsall in this one. Another local rivalry is Woking versus Aldershot Town. Actually, this gets quite violent at times. And I'm always looking at Aldershot and thinking, how on earth do they manage to stay competitive in this league? We've got John Coleman, the former Accrington Stanley man, in charge. And you know what? They've got 4 defeats in a row. They're down in 17th. But every single time they seem to be in like a really bad losing spot, and yet are permanently in that mid-table, like around anywhere between like 11th and where they're currently sitting, like 18th, 19th. It's just like, how are they always in this position? So I'm sorry, but considering your bad run of form, I'm going to have to give a win to Woking here. I've gone 3-0 to the Cardinals in this one, who are also 4 games unbeaten. Aldrincham versus Southend United. 4 wins in 6 for Alty is not bad going at the moment, and actually is better form than Southend. And this is one of them games that Southend could quite easily falter over because Aldrincham, they've got now to play for, and so Southend will probably just be coming into this thinking, nice, easy game, and a bit of a dead rubber game for Aldrincham, all things considering, and then Alty just whip out a 2-0 win like that. Bournemouth versus Gateshead. Difficult game for Gateshead, it must be said, but I think maybe with his late run of form at the moment for Gateshead, Bournemouth might need to be a bit worried because they are not always winning every game at the moment. They're not bad, but they're not flying at full colours at the moment. 1-1 draw is what I've gone with in this one. Braintree Town versus Scunthorpe United. And to only be fair, I'm also going to go with a 1-1 draw with this one because I think this relegation race goes right down to the wire. It goes down to the final day. I'm saying it now. There are Brackley Town, 36 points. Then the relegation zone teams. Morecambe, 34. Braintree, 34. Gateshead, 34. This is what football is all about. 4 teams all battling out for 1 teams to be safe. That's what I think it's going to be like. So that's why I've gone with a 1-1 draw. It opens it up, makes things seem a little bit more competitive than maybe it actually will turn out to be. Carlisle United versus Boston United. Boston aren't a bad team. 12th place. They've really picked up form to actually have a great second half of the season. I must say, impressing me with some of their results. But Carlisle, well, they'll be looking to right the wrongs and get back to winning ways in this one. They lost their last game, didn't they? Up against Tamworth, wasn't it? Away from home. And I would say Boston aren't likely. I think I'm pretty much going to say they're definitely not going to get to the playoffs at this point in the season. So it's a bit of a dead rubber game for them. And I think maybe at Carlisle's Brunton Park, 4-2 to Carlisle United. Forest Green Rovers versus Wealdstone. Forest Green haven't really impressed me. They seem to be slowly. They did a great job in the first half of the season to looking really competitive. But now I think they're in danger, maybe potentially even sleepwalking out of the playoffs. We'll have to see. Robbie Savage, the manager, is a very divisive figure. Some people love him, other people absolutely despise him. He is one of the most Marmite people in the whole of football, I would suggest. And I would suggest that Wealdstone do go out and win this one 3-0, which actually puts them in a very decent position because if they could suddenly start accumulating a few results, they've got 2 games in hands over Halifax and a 11-point swing, which is, it seems a lot, but suddenly when you reduce it down to, say, 5 points, it is approaching crunch time, though, isn't it? You gotta lock in for these final 10 games or so. Hartlepool versus Eastleigh. I mean, Hartlepool, a team which flatter to deceive every single week. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, sometimes they draw. It's just so hard to predict. 14 losses, 12 draws, 11 wins. Sorry, 11 losses, 12 draws, 14 wins. That's the way to do it. Whereas Eastleigh, they're a team which will stay up, but they've not looked great this season. Have they actually appointed a new manager? That is a good question because they were looking for a manager at one point. Still got Richard Hill as the interim from what I can gather. I've gone with a 0-0 draw in this one because why the heck not? Rochdale versus Tamworth. Rochdale, I'm going to get back to winning ways here. 3 defeats and 4 for Tamworth, although they did have that win against Carlisle in the last one. So maybe they raised their game in this one, Tamworth. I don't know. But yeah, Rochdale to win 3-0 at home. Sutton United versus Truro City. Sutton have managed to put the Jets on to vault them up into 15th and well clear that relegation worries because it was touch and go at some points this season. It really was for the team from South London. And you would suspect they managed to beat Truro City, surely. They're at home at Green Grander Lane. 1-0 to Sutton United. I've gone with a win. Nothing comprehensive or massive by any stretch. But yeah, Truro, I mean, they look so disinterested and down and out and just happy to be back in the National League South, I would be brutally honest. Yeovil Town versus Morecambe. 19th versus 21st. Not quite level as 6-pointers because, there's 7 points difference, but it will be a huge result if Morecambe get a win here. That would certainly aid their plea and I think put Yeovil in real danger. But ever who-ish, it's a long way to go for Morecambe fans. I've gone 3-2 for the Glovers. Just think we are sort of edging out here, but it could quite easily go the other way because Morecambe are on a better run of form. York City versus Brackley Town. This will be the most random football thing ever, wouldn't it? If Brackley Town managed to go and beat York City, which I've got written down, I've got Brackley Town to win 2-1 against York City. Because York City's bogey team is actually Brackley Town. I don't know how many people knew that, but they don't always get great results against Brackley. Not sure why. It's just a case. Solihull Moors versus Halifax Town. 7th place Halifax should probably be hoping to win this one against a winless Solihull, although they would have won by my estimates at this stage. But yes, I suspect Halifax do win this one 2-0. A relatively routine win for the Shaman. AFC Telford United versus Marine. Telford, I think, if they can get some consistency going, they'll be in a strong position. Marine are like the definition of inconsistent because they're like 4 games in hand, which they could, if they win all of them, they're suddenly well in contention to playoffs, but they're just not going to because they're so inconsistent. Yeah, so 2-0 to Telford in this one at the New Bucks Head. Buxton versus Bedford Town. Another definition of inconsistent is Buxton, and I think for some reason Bedford are going to win this. They might be hoping because I think mathematically, if Merthyr Town get promoted, and Yeovil Town also get, or like the bottom 4 actually at the moment get relegated the way they are, there's a chance I think that or 3 Northern or like Brackley Town get relegated or something like that, and Braintree stay up or something like some configuration of that, then Bedford could actually switch to the National League South, which would be much more better for them, I would suggest. So, yeah, I think they might want to. There's a bit of incentive there in that. 3-0 to Bedford Town in this one. Chester versus Southport. 4 games unbeaten for Chester. Decent enough, and Southport in 16th. Gone with a 0-0 draw in this one. Both on decent runs of form at the moment, let's be brutally honest. So I can't really pick a winner. Kingsland Town versus Curzon Ashton. Maybe Curzon Ashton to get back to winning ways here. They should do. Kingsland aren't world beaters by any stretch of imagination. Maybe it walks. Curzon Ashton win 2-0. Leamington versus Scarborough Athletic. 4 draws in the last 5 games for Scarborough. They are the largest drawing team in the league, and I think they get a draw up against Leamington here. I've gone with another 1-all draw for Leamington here. I think that's twice in one video. Macclesfield versus Hereford. Unfortunately, I think Hereford's great run of form comes to an end. They've got some difficult games, haven't they? And Macclesfield is just the latest hurdle. They may have just run out of its steam. Defensively, I think they'll be all right, but I think Macclesfield do edge out as 1-0 winners. Oxford City versus Chorley. Oxford City surely must be viewing this tie as a must-win game. 1 win in last 6 for Chorley. Not a great outfit on paper at the moment. And Oxford are 1 point above a relegation zone, so they're going to desperately be wanting this. I don't think it'll be easy as they think. I think it's going to be a 2-2 draw, because the issue with Oxford isn't actually going forward. It's for 59 goals conceded, which, I mean, they're just a bit mediocre. It's not not bad, but it's not great either. Peterborough Sports versus Darlington. Going to go another win for Peterborough Sports here, I'm going to say. I think they are suddenly going to have some late energy and resurgence of run. 4-1 for Peterborough Sports, which is a bit of a mental statement to say. Radcliffe versus Kidderminster Harriers. I think Kidderminster Harriers get back to winning ways. Radcliffe have managed to hit a stumbling block, which seems to be a bit immovable at the moment. They've been very transparent with their financial funds, haven't they, Radcliffe? Do let me know what you think of that as well. Yes, I've gone 4-0 to Kidderminster Harriers. South Shields versus Merthyr Town. Important game and cannot be understated. Second versus third, may even be the playoff final. I actually suspect it could be, although I think Telford might manage to, if they push into the playoffs, have real conversations about that. But I've gone 3-1 to Merthyr Town in this one. It won't result in any difference for South Shields. They're still probably going to be in contention at the top end of the pitch, but table rather. But yeah, difficult one. Spennymoor Town versus Alfreton Town. I'm going to be seeing Alfreton next week, not this week. So I'm deciding to go and see Matlock versus Heaton Stannington instead. But yes, Spennymoor are a team which I've been to once before, hence why I've got this wonderful looking pint glass. To watch them up against Buxton early on this season. And they were decent enough. They looked in control for large parts of the game, but couldn't see out a game. But maybe against a worse opposition in Alfreton, and it must say he said this was about half a season back now. We're talking about back in November time. So yeah, 3-1 to Spennymoor Town is what I've gone with. I just can't see Alfreton winning it. Worksop Town versus Fylde. Demolition job by Fylde against Worksop. It's going to be happening, isn't it? It's surely the result which will happen here. 6-1 to AFC Fylde. Into the National League South, and we've got AFC Toten versus Worthing to start us off in this league. Yes, I suspect Worthing win this one. Toten, they're sort of down and out now. Not a lot to play for. They slipped out of the playoffs and then just sort of carried on slipping down. Worthing, they're in third. They'll be wanting to make sure that they're only 4 points off 8 places, by the way. So they just need to keep on churning out results. And I think a comfortable 4-0 win for the Sussex-based team versus the Wessex-based side. Chelmsford City versus Dover Athletic. I think maybe an end-to-end game here is my sneaky suspicion. I think because Chelmsford aren't quite consistent enough to manage to nail on a playoff spot, although they could do it by the end of the season, it's going to be very, very difficult for them, I would suggest. Up against a Dover side who score a lot, but also concede a decent amount as well. I'm going to go 3-3 draw in this one. Crazy end-to-end stuff. Chesham United versus Maidstone United. Chesham 6 points off the playoffs, as I mentioned earlier. Get a win here, and suddenly I would say they're in contention, because Maidstone have a team in 8th, just outside the playoffs by a point. And I think Chesham may be providing further twists and turns in this late tale of the National League South, which is such a wonderful league. 2-0 to Chesham. Chippenham Town versus Eastbourne Borough. Real relegation 6-pointer, this one. Chippenham are 2 points off safety, although have played 2 games more than Farnborough at this moment in time. So this is a bit of a must-win game for Chippenham. Eastbourne, bottom of the league, 6 points off Farnborough, also have played 39 games. If Eastbourne lose this, then I would say they are definitely going to be relegated. And for ages, I have been saying Chippenham will definitely be relegated. And then they suddenly have this burst of new life. 3 wins in the last 4 games. Have been picking up points, and I think they win this one fairly comfortably. 3-0 to Chippenham Town. Bring this miraculous story on, is what I say. Dagenham Redbridge versus Torquay United. Back-to-back wins for Torquay. Their interim manager was Neil Warnock, and he necessarily didn't do the greatest, but I think he's a trusted pair of hands, let's be honest here. I think they win this one as well. 1-0 in traditional Warnock style to Torquay United. Ebbsfleet United versus Weston-super-Mare. It's a huge game, really. So it's 7th versus 9th. If Weston-super-Mare win this one, they will leapfrog Ebbsfleet United, potentially. Well, they will leapfrog them. It's just whether they will leapfrog into the playoffs or not. It's a real question. I think Ebbsfleet maybe at home advantage might help them out here. 2-1 to Ebbsfleet United is what I've gone with. But there's going to be a lot of jostlings for them playoff positions coming the end of the season, isn't it? Farnborough versus Slough Town. Farnborough are just above that relegation zone. Important game, I would suggest. 13th place Slough Town. Slough ain't got anything to play for, really. So, yeah, I think 1-0 to Farnborough. It's not going to be pretty, but I think they might be able to just edge out a win, which may prove to be a vital 3 points come the end of the season. Hampton and Richmond Borough versus Horsham. I think both of these two teams pretty much don't have anything to play for. I think Hampton and Richmond Borough have just about managed to do enough. Although I would say that I'd be definitely confident if they get 3 more points, probably. But I don't think the 3 points is coming here. I must stress that. I think it will be a 1-1 draw. Hornchurch to Hemel Hempstead Town. All the H's of late, isn't it? But yes, Hemel Hempstead, ridiculously good. 4 wins in a row. But Hornchurch, they're second in the league. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one to call and could really go either way. I've gone 1-0 to the home side Hornchurch just because I think it's going to be a real tight game and it could really go either way at the moment. Hemel Hempstead need to keep up that good run of form because I'm not fully convinced how they managed to get into the playoffs with 44 goals scored. It feels quite ridiculous, really. Maidenhead United versus Dorking Wanderers. Well, Dorking aren't running away with the league, as I maybe suggested earlier, and I think Maidenhead United 1 defeat in the last 6, 4 games unbeaten. I'm going to have to back Maidenhead at home here. 4-2 winners. Salisbury versus Enfield Town, another important game at the bottom of the end of the table. 90th place Salisbury, which are currently at the moment 8 points clear relegation zone. But if Enfield do manage to get a win, which are 5 points off safety, closes that gap for both teams, doesn't it? And I think Enfield do win this one to open wide the relegation picture. 2-1 to the side from North London. Tunbridge Angels versus Bath City. Bath have had 12 draws, which is a fair, decent amount, and Tunbridge Angels on 11. Maybe another draw in this one. We'll go with a 0-0 draw. The Tyne and Wear derby is next. Newcastle United versus Sunderland. If you are a Newcastle fan, do let me know. Would you rather win the game in the Champions League up against Barcelona and go through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, but lose to Sunderland? Or would you rather beat Sunderland and lose to Barcelona? Well, like, which one would you rather take? Local bragging rights or being in the Champions League and claiming to have beaten Barcelona? I think I personally might want to beat Barcelona because, that's historic. That can be talked about for ages. You'll be playing Sunderland next season, and by then it will all be done and over with. That's just my personal opinion, and I actually think this game I'm not going to call it. Because whichever way I call it, I'm going to get my head absolutely kicked in because I am living in Newcastle. So I should probably back Newcastle. But I have got Sunderland friends as well. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, though. I'm going to be completely diplomatic on that one. Aston Villa versus West Ham United. I would love West Ham to beat Villa. Please, please, please beat Villa, West Ham. I just don't think it's going to happen, though. I think it's going to be a similar game to the one against Manchester City last week that West Ham had. And I've gone with a 1-1 draw. A really important game, Tottenham Hotspur versus Nottingham Forest. Unfortunately, both sides cannot both lose. So I have unfortunately gone for Tottenham Forest. yeah, that will be it. Nottingham Forest to win this one 2-1. Yes. I mean, it would be funnier, I think, to see Spurs relegated than Nottingham Forest relegated. But it could be, yeah. And the final one is Arsenal versus Manchester City in the EFL Cup Final. Hugely interesting game. Will Arsenal potentially win the double? Can Man City actually get a cup in this? I'm going with a 1-1 draw, and I have gone for Arsenal to win in extra time or penalties. I think it's going to be quite a dull game. This one seems to have emerged a lot into a penalty shootout and extra time recently. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe if you're new around here. I do appreciate the free subscribers. I think we're almost at 250 on 249 or something like that. I think at one point we were potentially at 250, but seem to move back down again now. So maybe that was a broken out for them. But I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.